Welcome to another edition of the Empower Hour. I am Al Kumar.
And I'm Hanifa.
And we're here coming back to you on a Wednesday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m. as we do every week with another impactful topic of discussion. In the studio today we have this face that should be familiar to a lot of you guys who watch us every week. Brother Imhotep Fatiu is back in the studio with us once again. You're a very popular person on the show. It was somebody, I was putting some ads out and we had some responses. Oh, cool. I like that brother. That brother goes deep. That brother know what he's talking about.
We do get good feedback.
Yeah. So they look forward to having you on.
Okay.
And so if you're unfamiliar with this face, this is the founder of the Pan-African Liberation Movement. Baba, tell us a little bit about the movement in Baltimore.
PLM, Pan-African Liberation Movement, is principally, from my standpoint, when I began to think about conceiving it, I wanted to create an organization that I felt focused on authentic Pan-Africanism. What I believe happened over the years is many individuals use the terminology Pan-Africanism, but I think we incorporate a lot of elements that's un-African. And so what I want to do with PLM is to build an organization that stands firmly on African principles. I think that we are in an era of time where every group of people need to hold on to what their ancestors laid down for them. And I think it's time for African people to live according to African tradition, customs, and rituals, and spiritual systems, and things of that nature. So that's what PLM is about. Pan-African because we see the unity of African people throughout the world, and our organization is geared towards trying to bring about the sovereignty of African people. And we do that in a number of ways. And the primary way I think that you can pull that about is you bring about people, community. I think community is very therapeutic. Community is powerful. And I think that we have to strive to build communities, because once we build those communities, we can begin to move towards nations and things of that nature and get towards sovereignty.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that goal rolls right into the topic of our discussion today, which my sister Hanifa is so good at coming up with these topics. I just lean all the way on her for them, which is the conflict of cultures. What is African American?
Because we
this should be a fascinating discussion.
A part of the reason why we thought about it is because there's been a lot of ongoing conversations around where you'll have people in the diaspora and they'll say, oh, first America, I'm African. I'm not African American. Or you'll hear African Americans born here, their ancestors, as far as they could trace back, were in the Americas. They'll say, I'm Black American. I'm not African American. So I'm sort of like, and people will really feel strongly about it. And so there's sometimes it can create a conflict, because sometimes when people say, I'm not African American, African Americans can get really defensive and kind of be offended by it. So I wanted us to have the conversation.
Right. What is African American?
That's a great question. Dr. Jacob Carruthers has this book out, and I believe the title of the book is African or American. And he dealt with that issue and that topic. And the point that he was making is that there was a time period when our ancestors referred to themselves as Africans within this land. So we didn't always refer to ourselves as African Americans. When you read our history in this land and you start looking at us in the early 1700s and 1800s and look at the organizations that we was developing and things of that nature, we always had the terminology or the understanding that we were African people. As the longer we was in this land, we began to become many different things. And now we're in 2018 where you have those who refer to themselves as African Americans, and then you have those who don't, for the most part. So I would say this African American pretty much is a political entity. It's a political concept, right? Now, but Pan-Africanism is where we have to be, because with Pan-Africanism, we're not recognizing those borders, because we have to move beyond the borders. So the same way someone may say they're an African American, and they may justifiably feel that way because we all in this particular land, and they probably can only go back to a great-great-grandmother who was probably born in this land, And they probably say on the basis of the work that we put in this land that we should call ourselves African American. So that's an understandable argument. Mm-hmm. However, where we are at within the world as a people, we got to begin to see ourselves as a world people. And on the basis of world people, we got to knock those borders down. So even those who may say they're Haitian or Trinidadians or whatever, or from the UK, we still got to move to the place where we all see ourselves as being African people, because our unification comes first. And that's the reason why when Marcus Garvey was asked the question about whether or not he was Jamaican or whatever, he said he's not going to give up a continent for a country, for the most part, because he was trying to get us to understand that, yeah, we recognize that we are, an island, yes. We are in this land, and no one is saying, you know what I'm saying, we don't appreciate or recognize the labor that we put in this land. Right. No, we have a right to all of that, but we are much more than that. We precedes that, and we're going to always extend beyond that. Yeah. So in the final analysis, we have to start moving ourselves to a place of one common denominator, and that's our Africanity. And this is what we must begin to recognize ourselves as being African people. So Pan-Africanism becomes so essential because it's stretching beyond those borders and trying to recognize one worldwide African people.
And it stretches, I feel like, beyond our differences too. Cultural differences. Because the truth be told, a person born in Africa, a part of Africa, a country in Africa, and a black African person born here, they're experiencing two different cultures. And I think what divides us more than borders is our focus on our differences. That gets in the way of us unifying oftentimes, at least from my observation. Because you go to some place like New York where it's just like so many different cultures, specifically like Caribbean cultures, you know, you see everyone, there's like a big melting pot. But you just see black people. But it's almost hard, you know, if something happens, you quickly see like a division happen. Well, I'm not African American, I'm from the Caribbean, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But really getting to that point where it's not about, because really what you're talking about when you say that is really cultural differences, you know, and what would we say, nationalities, you know, which is still cultural differences to me. So on top of that, there are those differences that we tend to focus more on versus our similarities.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
Rather than saying cultural differences, because wherever African people are at within the world, the underlying cultural principles that girds our reality are African. So whether I'm born in the UK and if you really analyze a person that was born in the UK, and you will see that that person, he or she, behaves in a very similar way to people that was born in the Caribbean, people that's born in Africa, on the things that we do, the way we look at and recognize our mothers and family. So our cultural norms are the same. See, what tends to differ is the reality we are in, right? And the pressures in that reality, because African culture is malleable. So it will adapt to its locality. But when we get past the manifestations of how we exercise this culture, we see underlying it, we see the similarities. You see the rhythm throughout African world. You can't go nowhere where African people are and you don't see rhythm. That's it. It's in the food. You can't go nowhere through that, right? And even in language, like even in what they call as Ebonics, or the language that our brothers and sisters may speak in the UK or the Canadian or the Caribbean,
I know
right?
some words that we still use today.
That's all of that, like, you know what I'm saying? If that's us. Essentially, it's African. Now, what happens is that we have been removed from understanding that African cultural current. And since we don't understand the African cultural current, we tend to focus more on the manifestations and think that we are different. But we are essentially the same people.
So I'm glad we kind of transitioned into culture, because I want to touch on that. Because when we talk about African culture, which way I'm going to begin by first asking you what exactly is culture? What does culture consist of? Because we hear the word thrown around a lot, but if we could maybe try to define it and talk about exactly what does it consist of? What is culture?
Culture, essentially, I'll start off by saying this. Culture essentially is the collective behavior of a people. Now, what that behavior is defined by is the people's ideals, aspirations, principles, their customs, traditions, rituals, their attitudes, their belief systems. All of this is what makes up the culture. Okay. So how we behave as a people is dictated by those things. Okay. So that's what culture is. So when you find us in the United States of America, you find us behaving in certain ways. In the case, I give an example. Like, when you look at the brothers and sisters that coming out of the southern part of the United States of America, they say we have this. They say a southern hospitality. That's what they call it, right? However, African people are just. That's us anyway. It's not. Yeah, it's not necessarily a southern hospitality. We call it that because we don't understand. You see what I'm saying? How to really link it to its natural origin. So that's who we are anyway. That's what we do, right? We are people-centered people. We love people. We are very life-centered people. Now, another thing, if you go and you find people that might say, well, they might say something like this right here. Well, black women, they got too much attitude. You heard something similar to it before, right? But there is no African woman in existence who don't have attitude, right? Not in a negative way. Attitude in the sense that it's in the African woman's nature to draw on the man to bring the man to his manhood, right? Because the woman naturally gravitates toward strength. So with people who say things like that are people who are unsure, who are unclear as to who they are. So they misrepresent how women behave, African women. So it's that misrepresentation, and because we are defining women from how white people see our women. Right. So we look at our women the way white people look at our women, right? So we're going to say the wrong things about them. You know what I'm saying? No, black women don't have too much attitude. Black women are supposed to have the rhythm. She's supposed to have the spasm that she had. She's supposed to have all of that, the oomph. That's what makes her who she is. And so if you read in any of the cosmologies, you see that. Oshun had it. That's in the cosmology. Aset had it. Heru had it. You can't even read about us and not seeing that in the culture. So it's not a negative. It's only a negative for people who don't understand us. And then when black people adopt the mentalities of other people as we relate to ourselves, we're going to mischaracterize our women. Right. So everything that we do as a people is us. Like even hip-hop. Hip-hop is us. Hip-hop extends out of African. You know what I'm saying? The beats and all that stuff, that's the drum essentially for the most part, right? Even when you get down into the rapping part of it, the spoken word poetry, right? The spoken word is us. Nomo is African. You know what I'm saying? The power of the word has always been inherent in African realities. So we're not the first people who originated, you see what I'm saying, the words of power. The words of power is what we brought to it. With us, Nomo. Because we don't have this knowledge, we think it's different.
But when you say Africa, I'm sorry, for some, because I've heard this asked many of times. When you say African culture, right? Africa is a continent, 54 countries, right? Thousands of languages, thousands of customs, thousands of traditions. So when we say African culture, how do people know which African culture to adopt, or is there like
there's only one culture? Okay. That's what we have to study. Cheikh Anaja got one of the best books out. It's called the Culture Unity of Africa. If you go read that book, he explains how there's only one African culture. So the same things that we might see in Kemet, you see, case in point, the Neteroos in Kemet is nothing but the Orishas in West Africa. They are the same, but the language changed. See, language changed. A number of factors that impacts language is geography, climate, topography, all those things impact language. So, but when you start looking at the origins of language, we see a lot of the languages coming out of the northeastern corridor of Africa for the most part. So when you look at a Heru and Kemet cosmology, you see a Shango in the west for the most part. So there's only one culture. You find ancestral reverence in all of the areas you go. You find the representation of life across the board. You find child-centeredness across the board. You find the woman being upheld across the board prior to any invasions, right? So you find the underlying cultural principles throughout the land, right? Dr. Cheikh Anaja put the book out, and then Chancellor Williams put his book out, The Destruction of Black Civilization. And what he said in there in his book, and he did his book on the ground field research for 16 years, what he found and realized is that there's only one African culture. Malife Ashanti got a book out that's called The Spear Masters. And his book is called Spear Masters, and what he demonstrated in his research is that even when you get down to African spiritual systems, right, you have one underlying African spiritual system that manifests itself differently in different localities. But the underlying principles, the current that makes it what it is, the substance, the stuff, is the same throughout the continent. It's one.
Here's my question. What happens to a people who take on another culture?
Wow, man, that's an excellent question. You lose yourself And the longer you behave in the manner of another person's culture, the further you move away from yourself. And basically, what we see today with a lot of our people throughout the world is as a result of that. Many of us don't have our culture. Culture is essential to your psychological development. Mm-hmm. Your psychological stability is contingent on your cultural awareness. Your spiritual enlightenment is contingent upon your cultural awareness. So when we see our people living in these decadent states of mental health, a lot of that is linked to the fact that we are culturally misorientated. Mm-hmm. So we are behaving in ways that other people have said that this is how you should behave. Mm-hmm. Case in point, the way some of our, and I like to talk about this, like the way some of our males tend to relate to a lot of our women. That's not African. Beating women, hitting women, punching on women, that's not African. Dominating women, that's not African. There's nothing African about that at all. So when we find that, that's someone who's not living in his primarily correct mindset. You know, when you find women who that may be very demeaning to the man, it can be a good guy. Well, I don't want him. He's a good guy. I want one of these roughnecks out here. You know what I'm saying? He's a pusher. This, that, and other. That's not us. Our women never viewed our men that way. That's us behaving outside of ourselves because we have adopted someone else's worldview. And when you adopt another people's worldview, which essentially is the culture, when you adopt that worldview, how you see the world is going to be skewed. And that's what's happening.
So how did we get here? How did we get from, having our own culture and practicing our own culture and being in a sane state of mind to what we view today?
We have to. I know a lot of people don't like to. A lot of people may not agree with what I'm about to say, but I think that anytime you're fighting an enemy, right? I think it's a mistake if because of your dislike for the enemy, you fail to recognize that enemy's strength. I think it's a mistake. I'm not going to go in a ring with you, and because I'm really mad at you because I'm fighting you, that I'm not going to recognize that you're a good fighter. I'm going to get destroyed, right? And I think we tend to do that as we begin to study. I think we begin to study and we begin to learn, and we develop a dislike for what these people have done so much that we fail to recognize some of their strengths.
Absolutely,
right?
I agree.
The Europeans were very wise at how they constructed the system to begin to move us away from ourselves and move us into their way of being. They was wise at that, and we have to acknowledge that. So we got here through them constructing a system that was designed to socialize us in ways that benefited them, but ways that worked against us. So this is a socialization process, and now it's automated. And it's principally automated because of the educational institution that they built, right? So what I'm saying is this: if you send 100 of us into their educational institution, 15 may not be affected, right? But 85 of us will. And so, and the logic is this: because the 15 wasn't affected, we begin to argue that the system isn't flawed. But that's wrong. Yeah, that's wrong. Very true. Because you can never get 100% of anything. Right. So even when they set out to destroy the natives, they didn't wipe 100% out. You know what I'm saying? You can't ever get 100%, but you're always going to get a mass majority. Yeah. And that's what they done. Right?
Right. And that what comes to mind is like, well, for people who will hear you say that and they think about their own lives and say, I'm good. I'm fine. I don't need no African culture. I'm doing good. I have my job. I'm raising my kids, to fear God or what have you. So what are you talking about? I don't need no African culture.
I'm quite sure the brothers and sisters who wasn't on the plantation felt the same way, but they still were subjected to the same treatment. I'm quite sure some of the brothers and sisters on the plantation who was allowed to have a pot of grass to make some food probably felt that way at some point in time, but they were still subject to that same system. So just because the people that dominate you allows you a little bit of mobility, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have come into freedom, right? And I think that's the illusion. Right? Yes, some of us do have mobility. It's limited mobility because we need to keep us confused, and so we need to create situations where some of us believe we have arrived.
Yes, I believe that goes into the effectiveness of the system.
That's right.
If you are in that state that you've arrived and you good, then the system is very effective.
Oh yes, it's effective because
got you hook, line, and sinker.
Because believe it or not, in order for things to be the way that we really want things to be, a lot of individuals who have these plush lifestyles, these lifestyles really have to be disrupted.
Yeah.
And see, they was allowed to have these plush lifestyles because before they allow their lifestyles to be disrupted, for the rest of us to be okay, or for some type of equality to exist amongst African people, these individuals will fight against us. They will fight against us. So what I'm saying is this. So this idea of a quote unquote middle class, this idea of that, right? That's an illusion.
Yeah.
What you truly have is a buffer class. You have a buffer class. It's not a middle class, right? You have a buffer. You have a zone of individuals who have been deluded into believing they are better than another part of people, right? Who will be utilized at a certain point to keep these other people from moving forward. That's what you have. There is no such thing as a middle class. You have dominance and dominated. It's always been that way. That's what Europeans create. There is no middle class. I don't care how we argue that. I don't care about nobody getting with a six-figure salary. You know, you're not in the middle class.
Yeah.
What I'm saying? Because we live within a society that have constructed systems, processes, and protocols to deal with African people a particular way, right? And just because you're not being dealt with momentarily doesn't mean that you won't and can't be dealt with the way we deal with everybody else. You will.
I have to say this. And I'm listening, and
Yes.
someone
Yeah.
is
That way.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
You're fine. Someone that exists within that system, because I've been in many conversations where that point is brought up. But I always feel like it sounds so hopeless. You know, when we have these conversations, and I'm like, okay, so you're existing in this system, because I think we talk about the system within the U.S., but in a sense, the system to me is global. So what is the result for that? Like, how do we? Is it even possible? Like I'll say, to get out of the matrix, how do you exit that? You know what I mean? Because when we have these, I always feel like, so then, what's the solution?
So you're correct. So when I speak of the system, my whole worldview and how I see everything is never localized.
Okay.
Right. So I know the United States of America is only 270 million people. It's very tiny, right?
Right.
So but the USA is an empire.
Mm-hmm.
It's an empire that has tentacles that stretch across the world. So what African people will have to do essentially, if we talking about if we really are really serious and talking about some serious business, Africa has to be freed. We need a power base, and it has to be Africa. So, but we know Africa is in its own state of shambles for the most part. So we start where we at. We're doing what we can do, but ultimately, with a Pan-African mentality, we got to begin to link up with our brothers and sisters that's abroad. We got to begin to link up, and we got to begin to build. So there's a push right now. There's a push for the Pan-African Federalist Congress. So what's happening right now, as we speak, so you have some Africans that have been organizing for like the last 7 years. I mean throughout the world. And I was a part of one of the symposium a couple of weeks back. But there's a push to move for United African States, not the United States of Africa, you know, but the United African States, because we recognize that the AU is defunct for the most part. The AU is not really doing what it was designed to do. The AU is not carrying out in the tradition of Kwame Nkrumah with the Organization of African Unity. It's not carrying it out, right? So you have this new push that's coming forth, and they're going to have in December this year in Ghana going to be the first pre-Congress towards this. But they're moving for the Congress that exists in 2020, and at this time period, it's going to be this push to try to bring this about. And I'm sharing that information to say that this is what has to happen. We have to think about it. Our fight got to be fought on multiple layers, simultaneous. So we have to think about how do we bring Africa together and make Africa strong, but at the same time, how do we make ourselves strong enough to be effective where we are at within the world? So those of us that are in the USA, we have to become stronger. And part of becoming stronger is, as I said always, we have to begin to build community. Now, if we don't want to go through the process of building community, we got to look out and try to figure out where some communities are already being built. And I give an example. Like what we're doing with Baltimore PLM, it's like 7 families that's a part of the organization. We all live in the same block. Okay. You know, it took us time to get people to move there. It took time. It took work. You know what I'm saying? It took meeting after meetings after meetings after meetings and conversation because we're orientated a certain way. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of us, I don't want to move in no inner city. I want to be in the county. You know what I'm saying?
Not Baltimore.
We got a lot of. We have a lot of anti-socialism with us. We got a lot of things that we incorporated and inherited from these people, right? That we talk about Africa, but we don't really want to be around African people for real, right? See, when you really understand African culture, that's not a single African culture traditionally where African people didn't long to be amongst African people. You didn't find African people seeking to move away from African people. So that's always my measurement stick to see how truly African-centered you are. Are you willing to live and be amongst African people, or are you bent on trying to move away from African people?
What if
right?
some of those places are unsafe, where people don't want to subject their kids to those environments? Because that is a reality as well. I mean, you go to parts of D.C. and parts of Baltimore.
That's delusion.
Is it?
The illusion is this: is to think that you are safe in the USA at all.
Right. Safety
That is
an
the illusion.
I agree.
That is the illusion, right? And I think as long as we think that we are unsafe amongst each other, and we are afraid to go do the work, we'll never get out these conditions, right? Now check this out. Now, although African people built the USA, but those Europeans that got on those boats and left those bastards, those criminals, those dirty people, whatever you want to call them, right? Who thought the earth was flat, they sailed into nowhere. And look what got built. Now, even though we did the work right, they constructed the system though. You know what I'm saying? But they went into no man's land, and now look what's here. You see what I'm saying? Until we realize that we got to be willing to go into something right and build it up, you don't get free. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're looking for a ready-made environment to just fall. And since it doesn't exist, we're unwilling to go get dirty, right? See, like Malcolm said this. He said, we don't want revolution. He said, because it's dirty. It's bloody. That's what it truly is, right? So when I tell people, like, let's go build a community, don't nobody want to come. Because the same argument is that it's unsafe. It's unsafe because men are not there. They're not there. Most of the men, we got families, we have women, and our women argument is, I don't want to be there. So the man, he compromised. Okay, let's move over here then. So he go. So you got men, you got brothers and sisters that are in the community, right? But we live on the outskirts of a community. But the work we want to do is inside the community. So we want to commute in and commute out.
Yes.
You can't build that way. You have to be community based. You can't be commuter. We have too many commuter organizations, and that's why we still in these conditions.
I agree with you, Imhotep. I'm asking the question because these are conversations.
I understand. I appreciate it because others ask the question.
Yeah, when I moved from New York, and I still haven't wrapped my mind around it, there is this idea of PG County itself, okay?
Where now it's Prince George's.
Yes, Prince George's. Oh. Right, but PG County itself, it's only when I moved to Montgomery County, I lived there very briefly, is where I realized, like, there is this big thing where Montgomery County has better schools, it has, and statistically when they're saying that their schools are some of the best in the nation, actually. And so you have people who may have grown up in the hood coming up, and from their own experiences, they want to give their kids a different experience. So for them, they work and they slave, to make sure that they can move out of the hood so their kids can have a different experience. So I don't necessarily think it's a running because I hate my people. It's a running because I think people, like you said, the illusion of safety, I agree. Safety is an illusion. You can get on a plane today and it can crash. You can drive down the street, you can get in an accident. Like the idea that we have, like, I'm not going to fly, but I'll drive 18 miles to wherever, nothing is going to, it's an illusion. I understand that part. But when people start to talk about their kids and watching out for their kids' safety, I don't really know what to respond because I get it. You know what I mean? I don't want to you don't really want community because I'm looking at them like, I know what you're saying as someone who grew up in the hood myself. Your people are running from that experience. They don't want that same experience for their kids. So it's a difficult thing. I love Baltimore. I kind of have a little, I've never lived, and I'm not from here, but whenever I drive through Baltimore and Anacostia, I always feel drawn to those two areas. But when I drive through Baltimore, just the abandoned buildings, and it's just, it doesn't give me the feeling of, you should move here today. It's not selling itself. So when I talk to people and they talk about Baltimore, I know what they're saying, but for me it's more almost like a spiritual connection. I feel something when I'm there. Yeah. So that's what I meant when I was talking about.
It's interesting how that, like for instance, the term PG, Prince George's,
Yeah.
where we are. We're in PG County, Prince George. I prefer PG, but there's been a push to use the term Prince George's. And I'm like, who is this Prince George's man, and why are we giving him so much, credence to that name? Why is that so important to speak? Because words carry energy.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and going back to culture. So it's like, so now what are we, we want to get more cozy and comfy with another people's culture. For instance, like what the names we give our children. So I've heard, which was foreign to me, and maybe that's just my ignorance, but I heard that people actually name their children European names.
Applications, job
Yeah,
applications.
so
Yes.
they can get better jobs.
It's very futuristic. Their thinking
When
is very
they grow up.
futuristic when they name their kids. Yes.
But I thought that was mind-boggling. So I'm like, you already in a state of mind.
Africans do it when they come here too. Their name could be Aki Bolila, and then they'll be up on the application Aki.
Wow.
That is not your name though, but it's
I
like
just
I rather
find it
just
fascinating
Yeah.
that we, that's the way we are thinking, to how we can be, we can help our children get better jobs. And when they get older, I don't
It's
know. Maybe that's just the
survival.
entrepreneurship.
It's survival.
in
We're
me.
not trying. It's on, instead of trying to change the system or to fight it or to abandon it altogether, we try to survive it, and and then we pass that on to our kids, because that's what's happening. You're not teaching your kids that this system here is against you. You're teaching them how to function with it, how to acclimate to it.
And which goes into my another question: is it possible to practice more than one culture? Can you be a person that just go in and out of cultures?
Code switch
Right.
cultures.
Culture switching. Is that possible?
But I'll say this: anytime you're dealing with a human being, almost anything is possible, because we are just we're so magnificent and so creative. We can do a lot. The question, I think, is that psychologically healthy?
Yeah.
That's what I would ask.
Yeah.
I don't think it's psychologically healthy.
Why not?
Because, case in point, I think when you have a culture, and your culture was set up by your ancestors, they knew what was best for the posterity. So they set it up in a way that was going to allow you to maximize your growth and development as a human being. It's the equivalent of me putting on someone. I'm 5'9", I weigh 165. I go pick up a suit that was owned by another person that's 5'9", that weigh 165, but it was tailor made. I can put it on, but it don't really fit me to T, because it wasn't tailored for me.
For you.
So I can wear it, right? But I can't really maximize the use because it wasn't tailored for me. And that's what culture is. So yes, we can pick other people's cultures up, but it wasn't tailored for us. So it can't maximize us.
So what happens?
What happens is that we learn how to function well, but we're not maximized. But we don't know we're not maximized because we're not in our own mindset.
Jesus Christ.
We don't recognize we're not maximized. So because we look at the case in point, like my son, right? If I was to send my 5-year-old son to any one of their schools, right, there's nothing they can do with him. You know what I'm saying? They're going to slow him down,
Jesus
right?
Christ.
Because he already know division. He know multiplication. But at 5 in this land, he got to go into the kindergarten.
Yeah.
So what can they do for him, right? So that's the point. So we don't realize how serious we are when we're not in our culture. When you're in your culture, there's no limits to us.
That's some powerful awareness.
Yeah.
There's no limit to us when you're in your own culture.
So it's almost like you're crippling yourself.
That's exactly what it is.
Jesus.
When you adopt another people's culture, you incapacitate yourself.
Jesus.
Who is responsible though, Imhotep? Who is responsible in ensuring the continuance of that culture to the next generation? Because I know I visited Uganda before, and even in parts of Africa, you see where the younger people they would rather dress in Western clothing than so some of them are even trying to slowly get away from their own culture. Who is responsible for ensuring the continuance of the culture? Are the elders failing this next generation, or is it
the elders aren't failing?
Okay.
In that particular sense, that's remnants of colonialism.
okay?
So the same way we went through educational systems over here and we were socialized a certain way, a lot of our brothers and sisters experienced it over there, the colonial missionary schools and
Yes, the missionary
schools and the
yep.
colonial education and things of that nature. And then with the advent of television and all this other stuff, and now you got the internet. So you got our people who are looking out into the world, and keep in mind that we're looking through another people's media. So granted, they are going to always hold themselves up in their way up. So when your way has been held up as if it's the way,
right.
and I'm looking like, then I want that, because that's the way. And that's what we're dealing with. So we're dealing with, like what Taking a Jet he calls it a cultural aggression. We don't realize that we are being aggressed upon. We don't realize we're being transgressed upon. If I go get a McDonald's job, they'll ask me to cut my beard off, right? That's a transgression.
The same thing with the natural
You know, all that stuff, right?
America,
but because people need jobs or feel like they need a job, we tend to do what? We tend to submit.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? But that's an aggression. And that's what we don't really get. And the people say, well, no, man, you got to do what you got to do to work. No. You don't have to do what you got to do. And the final analysis, what you got to do is you got to maintain the integrity of your culture. That's what you got to do. Because it's the culture that moves us into the future and beyond. It's the culture that keeps the people strong.
Right. So what we do is we place that job more important
In
than
the culture.
maintaining our culture. And then we have a mindset of believing that we have to do that in order to maintain a lifestyle or something.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
Culture, like I say this, where I'm at in my life, according to their
that's the crippling effect.
according to their statistics, right? I shouldn't be where I'm at.
Right.
I should have not written 4 books. Right. I should not have started a non-profit organization. I should have not been essential in starting a vegan restaurant. You know, I should not be married, you know what I'm saying, successfully for the last 13 years with 2 young children, and both of them are smart. You know, according to their statistics, if you buy into it. I don't have any of their education. They can't claim credit for nothing that I do. You know what I'm saying? I have my ancestral ways. That's what I'm thankful for. And this is why I'm so adamant about it, and that's why I use so much passion, because I'm not speaking from theory. I'm talking to my people from practice, from what I've done. You know, according to them, I shouldn't be here. I only went to their 8th grade. That's the farthest I went. I started going to prison. They started locking me up when I was 12. Training school at 16. I was in an adult prison in Hagerstown. Came home from prison, stayed home for like 9 months, and I got shot in my back, and I was paralyzed for 18 months. The moment I regained my ability to walk, I was back in prison doing 20 years. And I stayed in prison for 13 years and 9 months. And I come home in 2004 and been doing this ever since. So if you listen to them and you follow their ways, you're not going to get anything done. You're not going to get anything done. You listen to them.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I needed to hear that. Someone needed to hear that. That's very important.
Right. Same here.
And their standards are not as high as we think they are. They're very low.
They're very low in comparison to us. And we don't realize that we have been duped out. We have been made to believe that they have high standards. Their standards are low.
They're very low.
In comparison to our capabilities of African people.
Agreed.
You know?
Hence the crippling effect.
That's
we
right.
just got finished talking.
That's right.
So then if they and the thing is, if you realize, once you realize that their standards are low, and you realize it's positioned to where it's positioned to it's positioned to where it's viewed as the max. Yet it's very low. And you're striving as a black person to reach that standard. Then, if that standard is low, and that's what, and you're finding a difficult, it makes you feel, you internalize that as you're pretty much feeling like you're nothing. Because that standard is extremely low.
Why a lot of our children, I think, are so in disarray in the schools.
That's right.
In the public school system, is because they so far, their minds are so far advanced, and you trying to fit them in this square box. And then we say, well, what is wrong with these children? Something's wrong with these children. No. Something's wrong with sitting them in a classroom and trying to teach them something within a square box that they ain't even focused on.
That's right.
They ain't even interested in it.
A square box, and the classroom consists of some triangles, some circles, some square, some rectangles, and other shapes, but they all need to fit that square box. That's an insult to their own individual identity.
It is. And another reason why it fails in relation to us is because the total methodology of their teaching experience is totally logical. Right? It's just straight logical.
Left brain.
That's it. They just stand up and
memorization.
That's how they teach, right? And so, but not understanding that methodology is structured and geared towards white people.
Yes.
So white people can adapt to that and they can build off of that.
Yes.
But that's not us, right? And so since they don't understand us and how to educate us, right, there's always a failure there. For us, it has to be upbeat, fast-paced, rhythm, sound, movement, all of that, right? It has to be storytelling. This is how you educate us, you know what I'm saying? You educate us through the power of the word. They don't understand that. And a lot of us don't understand it, so we fail our own children.
This educational system is there to maintain the system.
That's
period.
right.
That's what it's for.
Yeah.
So what it's producing is human beings who are
Conveyor
coming out.
belt.
They're passive. They're not going to buck this. Well, like you say, and we're not talking about the 15 who got
That's
missed.
right.
We're talking about the 85.
That's right. Yeah.
That's going to come out marching to the same beats, regurgitating the same thing.
Conveyor
They
belt.
can't even critically think.
That's right.
They will not challenge the system.
That's right.
Because they've been indoctrinated to believe that the system is okay.
Yeah.
It's here to work on behalf
Hence
of you.
I'm doing
Yeah.
just fine.
Yeah.
I'm doing fine. I have my
Yeah.
Mercedes. I have my, white picket fence. My neighbors are European, and I'm good.
The arrival itself is an illusion. The American dream. Okay. Yeah.
Let me get into these promos. This is such a good discussion. I appreciate you, Baba,
Thank you. I
for this
appreciate being
one.
here.
We are at Everlasting Life Vegan Restaurant and Lounge, located at 9185 Central Avenue in Capitol Heights, Maryland. As you can see, Everlasting Life is a lot more than just a vegan restaurant. We have a full-fledged studio. We do a lot of different events here on a weekly and monthly basis, such as Children's Night, each and every Thursday night. Bring the children, Thursday. From 6 to 8 p.m., bring the children out. They eat free as long as they're accompanied by a paying adult. They do eat free, children 12 and under. And then they also enjoy all different kind of fun activities together. It becomes a children's village in here. So a lot of excitement. They have a really good time. And the children actually look forward to coming every week because they meet new friends and new people and get to know one another. So they look forward to it. So bring the children to Everlasting Life on Thursdays. Following that up is our dinner and a movie, which takes place each and every Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. We air a different movie or documentary, and we go right into a discussion following that. And we talk about what we just watched, and it's always a fascinating discussion. Hanifa was here last Friday dropping it.
Dropping what?
Dropping the knowledge.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The way you just said that, I don't know. Yeah.
Did y'all watch the one you told me I was going to watch?
Yeah.
Melanin Code?
No, yours.
Yes.
We did yours like
The
two
fatherhood?
Fridays
Yeah,
ago.
I missed
that
that
was
one.
good.
Yeah.
That was a good discussion too. Yeah. So we're going into what's the one? Urban Kryptonite. We're doing it in 2 parts because it's 3 hours long. So come on, join us for Urban Kryptonite this Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Always free. Marketplace, third Saturdays of every month from 11 to 4, which is coming up this Saturday. Fresh produce, supplements, herbs, garden herbs, vegan groceries, vendors are set up here selling all natural products. That goes on here from 11 to 4. Third Saturdays of every month, which is this Saturday. So come on out for that. Black Wall Street Renaissance is the one I host each and every first Saturday of the month. We take the lounge area, we invite different vendors in, it becomes a really nice marketplace, and then we open the stage up for different lecturers or things of that nature, people who who come to share with the community. So that goes on from 12 to 6 p.m. every first Saturday of the month. And 11th annual Pan-African Day of Solidarity.
Yes.
I'm coming this year.
Yes.
I'm coming. I missed the last 2 years, and I always feel burned when I miss it. So
this is the one with
year.
the tour, the museum tour first, and then the ball or something. Am I off?
No, that one is the Royal African, the gala. That's
the
in
one
October.
I know about. Okay.
Yeah, it's in October.
Okay.
Tell us about
the Pan-African Day of Solidarity we've been doing it for 11 years. Basically, the idea is to just try to create. We wanted to create a day when African people can come together, hopefully throughout the country, throughout the world, if possible, and we can just descend in one place and just be in solidarity, and just be a part of a marketplace, being part of good workshops that focuses on our Pan-Africanism, be a part of some type of Pan-African entertainment, and that's what we tend to do, and just socialize because we talk a lot about economics. But there is no economic growth and development without socialization. Mm-hmm. So you have to build people. If there's going to be economic development, it has to be people development. And I think a lot of times we skip the stages because we so, out of desperation, we focus out on economics like as if it's just about money. Mm-hmm. But, economic development follows people development. Mm-hmm. And so that's what the Pan-African Solidarity is about, is trying to create a place in a space where African people can come together and build one another up in a spirit of solidarity and recollecting and refreshing ourselves. And so when we go forth back out to do our work in our various areas, we're recharged. So that's what the Pan-African Solidarity is about. This is the 11th year. We're asking everyone to come out. Please be a part of it. It's always vibrant. There's never an incident, and it's family-oriented, and it's community-centered.
A lot of activity, a lot of excitement.
Yes.
It's always like bustling with all kind of different stuff. And that goes on in Baltimore.
Yeah, Baltimore. This year's going to be at 4100 Tawanda Avenue, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay. And that's what day is that?
That's a Saturday.
September
the 8th, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Okay. Yep. So Saturday, September the 8th. Okay, and can they go somewhere else to get more information about it?
Yes, they can go you can go to the Facebook page, Pan African Day of Solidarity, and when you go there, you'll see an event page, and you'll also just see a community page. So you can go on either one and get more information about it, or they can go to our website, which is plm95.org, and you can go there. You can get more information about Pan African Day of Solidarity and all the other initiatives that PLM is doing.
Will you be speaking then?
I'm not sure yet.
I have one question about PLM.
Yes.
Is PLM like a membership organization? Like, can people join it, become members of it, or?
Yes, people can become members of PLM after they have been thoroughly screened by us. I believe that we are in an era time where if we're going to get any work done, that people have to be willing to demonstrate their. I believe in these basic 3 spiritual principles, right? Sincerity, commitment, and service. So that's what I look for when I deal with individuals, because that's what I move from. So when people tell me or come to me and say they want to be in the movement or help do some work, over time I'm expecting to see these spiritual principles show up in their life. Because if you are genuine, right? See, genuineness is pure, and if you're genuine, then those principles are they're going to emerge out of that place and space. Right. If you're ingenuous, they're not going to come to the surface. So ingenuous people can never join. You know what I'm saying? I'm not looking for numbers. I'm looking for quality.
Right. Right on.
Good stuff. Good stuff. If you guys have any questions for Imhotep, we are taking calls. Number is 240-455-5934. Give us a call.
Someone missed the name of the first book that you referenced regarding culture.
Is
it Sheikh Anta?
Yeah, Sheikh on the job. Yeah, Cultural Unity of Africa.
By Sheikh Anton
Diop.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to go back to the political side of the word African American.
Yes.
And because some of us may not be aware of how that term even originated. And from what I understand, Jesse Jackson was the first to coin that term, and it's kind of stuck.
The term was used a few times prior to Jesse Jackson, but he did popularize it, and that's the reason why most of us remember it by him. So you had different instances when it was utilized prior to him, but he would be the one that we would get credit to because he kind of popularized it.
Okay.
And used it and put it on the popular stage, and after that it just became something that we became African Americans.
How important is the term we use to go back? We have so many different terms that we use to describe ourselves.
I would say this. The same way you can have a person that may say, I'm a Khan, I'm Igbo, Yoruba, whatever, right? Now, if you talk to the ones who are truly grounded, at the base, they know they're African.
Yeah.
Right?
Good point.
So I don't have a problem with you saying you're African American if you understand you're African. But if you want to argue me as if African American and African is distinct, then there's a problem. As long as we know who we are at the base and we know we African.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Like
we're African
like
people,
someone
right?
saying I'm from the Caribbean.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You know?
Right.
So as long as you understand that,
So
we're all Africans.
What if you're saying, well, I'm American?
Now, then we have a problem. Right? we have a problem, and I probably would ask you to go see some of our greatest African psychologists so they can help you out.
Why?
Because you're insane. That's a state of insanity to believe that you are an American.
There are a lot of black people
But listen, and although I know that this statement may offend individuals, but I believe in being brutally truthful. It's a Malcolm X said it best. He said, I'm paraphrasing when he was talking about kittens in ovens, and then he used another analogy about being at the table when everybody's eating, but you don't have anything on your plate, so you're not dining. You're just there. You know what I'm saying? So just because you're in this land, but you reap none of the benefits of this land, right? It doesn't make you a part of this land.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So I think we got to understand it like this. So granted, we were born here for the most part, but for us to just sever ourselves from our cultural roots and say I am an American, right? That's something that's going on another level that we need some clarity on. That's a state of confusion that you need some help with to become more clarified about who and what we really are.
Sorry, the kid knocking on the door made me lost my train of thought. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
What I find when people say that is, for me, it allows me to know that they don't know their history.
Yeah.
They never took the time to understand, to go back far enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, case in point, right? That's my point. Like an individual who has amnesia.
Yes.
Right? They don't know their history. They have no memory.
Yes.
So, but we can acknowledge that this person has some type of disorder.
Yes.
Because of that, and we labeled it amnesia.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the same thing on a community level. If an individual who don't have that knowledge of who he is historically, right, has a disorder.
Yes.
So isn't there a process of unlearning that has to happen first? Because I know once you begin to go through the process of like detox, I would say, of a lot of things that you've learned from a young age, it can make you angry because you feel like you've been lied to. It can cause depression. There's a lot of things that one goes through. But so to get to that way of thinking, to take on that African way of thinking, it sounds like if you're born in America, went to American schools, were educated by America, given jobs by America, it sounds like someone, let's say in their 40s, coming into this knowledge, it sounds like there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen first.
Oh, yes, because there's not a single individual of African descent who have been born within the United States of America that wasn't born into a European context.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think we tend to forget that.
Yeah.
So all of us, even the best of us, who put the best books out amongst us,
That's right,
also was born into that context.
We've been touched.
And because of that, they've been touched,
Yes.
right? So none of us are unscathed in that sense.
Yes.
So all of our processes are a continuous process, right? We enter into our process at different places, different stages, and different events occur in our life that move us into that process. But once you have moved into that process, it is a process of unlearning.
Okay.
And you have to continuously unlearn. And part of unlearning is to relearn.
Yeah.
And I think it's easier to unlearn when you're willing to accept who you are.
Okay.
Right? I think it's that unwillingness to accept who you are that complicates the unlearning process. See, for me, the moment I was exposed to our truth, I say, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I didn't question it.
Yeah.
Because I don't expect my ancestors to be without mistake. So I understand and know that cultures develops through trial and error. And I know that there's always going to be points and times in our history where we're going to see things that we may not necessarily agree with, right? But that's no reason to say, well, I don't want that, right? You have to accept who you are and accept that, because with the challenge of evolving and growing, there's also those good points. Like case in point, one of the best things I've learned about African people historically and culturally is the emphasis we placed on not allowing anything in human growth and development to be left to chance.
So what would you say to someone who may be on that path and they're searching and they're trying to get to where learn about the African culture that we've been talking about for the last hour? I personally don't think they will get it from Africans who are in America, and I because what we're talking about right now, they truly believe in the American dream. They truly believe in their kids getting into Ivy schools, getting into the best schools, living in the best counties. I'm not sure that those are the Africans. Would you suggest that someone possibly take like maybe a trip, and maybe get involved in the culture, maybe go there for a couple of weeks? Because this is my own personal opinion, and probably my little bias, but I just don't feel like you can really get the fullness of African culture from the Africans that we run into daily here. At least the majority of them. That's just my opinion.
I think there's a Bible that I have a great relationship with. He was making he was giving a speech one time, and he's from Nigeria, born and raised in Nigeria, very educated, very sharp, love African people. He was giving a speech, and probably partway through his speech, he stopped, began to shed a tear, and he said, "I want to share a revelation with everyone." So everyone want to hear what he got to say. He said, "Although I was born and raised in Africa, and I understand a lot about Africa," he said, "it took for me to come to the United States of America and meet an African who was born and raised in the United States of America to teach me what it means to be African." Let's not discount us out. I think historically, Africans in the diaspora, we are in our own way, we are continuation and we are continuity of African culture. We have added to it and we have evolved it in a number of ways. So granted, I believe that you can learn a lot from some of us who are here about what it means, but even those of us that we do learn from, I still think that we still should have that trip involved as well. I think at some point we still should go back and go there as well. But we can learn a great deal about what it means to be African from those of us here, because there are a lot of individuals who have dedicated their entire lives to uncovering and practicing our way. Like case in point, like you have in Brazil, right? You have that spiritual system, candomblé, for the most part, and you have Africans from the continent that will go there and study under the priests there to learn about an African spiritual system that technically was transported there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because you have arguably individuals that saying that in one sense that particular form of African spirituality is still pure. Right? It's still pure, and pure in the sense that it wasn't impressed upon by any type of Europeans, because it was practiced away from them. Although in Brazil it was practiced away from the Portuguese, and they was able to maintain it. So they developed ways to disguise it and hide it.
Yeah.
So it was never tainted.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of greatness that we have been able to retain and hold out in the diaspora.
I have one last question.
We have a few minutes left.
Okay, I know. I have I forgot. I'm sorry.
You sure?
Oh, yeah. Where, as far as someone, what would your advice be? And you probably say it. I probably just want to hear you say it again, because it probably was so powerful. But what do you say to those of us who maybe at a point where they feel hopeless in America and because of the condition of our people here, psychologically, economically, education, in all of those arenas. So they feel like, I just want to run. And understanding the political climate, if you understand it, and some people don't, the political climate in Africa, and that they have their own fights over there as well. So they might go up over there and run into another beast that they have to fight. But what is the advice that you would give to someone who their initial response to the condition of our people here is to escape to maybe, let's say, Africa?
My initial advice would be to anyone that's thinking that way. I would try to hear their reasonings behind why they want to do that. And then after listening to their reason, I would tell them that although things look very bleak with African people within the United States of America, I would tell them that we have made great strides, and we are making strides, and I would try to help them come to see and understand how we have evolved as a people. Yeah. See, we are a composite of African people.
Yes.
So that's the reason why I don't get into the argument about what tribe you come from and all that, right? Yeah. Because if you want to use that European terminology, tribe, We are, let's hypothetically say it's 2,000 tribes.
Mm-hmm.
We're that 2001 tribe.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we are.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
I like that. Mm-hmm.
If you want to use that terminology, we are, in fact, a unique blend
Yeah.
of African people that make up a unique blend of African people in the diaspora. That's what we are.
I agree.
And what we bring to it is this. We bring resiliency to this culture.
Mm-hmm.
We bring perseverance to this culture.
Mm-hmm.
We bring dynamism to this culture.
Mm-hmm.
We bring all of that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
We bring something. We bring the spirit of resistance.
Yes.
You know, you don't find African people anywhere in the world, you know what I'm saying, resisting the way we have resisted. No one had to deal with the form of chattel slavery we dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
Our brothers and sisters in the continent, they dealt with colonialism. Yes, they did, and it was barbaric. Yes, it was. But we, those of us in this land over here, with this beast we dealt with, and we survived, we still here, we have something to add to who we are. Mm-hmm. And this is what I want to share to anybody. You know what I'm saying? I know it's tough. I know it's hard. I know it wears you down at times. I understand all that. But at the end of the day, we have something deeply embedded inside of us that our ancestors gave us. We got to find out how to tap into that and bring it to the surface. Yeah. We can prevail and we will prevail. This is what we do. Yeah. This is who we are. Yeah. This is the essence of Africans within the USA. Mm-hmm. Resiliency, perseverance, you know what I'm saying, tenacity. This is who we are. Mm-hmm. And that's a spiritual dynamic there. Yeah. We cannot be crushed. Mm. They have tried it. Mm. There's nothing else you can do to us. You can't push us out of existence. We are here to stay. And we got to be able to embrace that and move forward. That's what I tell anybody.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to leave it right there.
Yeah.
We're going to drop the mic right there. Wow, this is your Empower Hour, family. We do this, Hanifa and I, each and every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Please join our Facebook page, Empower Hour Talk Show. Follow us to get this chime to go live. We also have a YouTube channel. If you join in later, you want to see any of our past episodes under Miss Free the People. That's with MS, Free the People. Subscribe to us there and share, please, by all means. Share this message, please, because I know I got a lot out of it.
Yes.
And if you got a little bit of something out of this message today, you never know who else lives can be touched by it as well. So it's our duty to get the word out. Thank you so much.
I want to thank both of y'all. Yes. I appreciate it. I enjoyed my time here always.
Yeah. And so we love to have you come back. That's why we have you come back.
It's always a blessing.
Yes. All right. Until next time, family. Peace.